you're a preacher kid, I'm testing your Sunday school years.
Oh, Lord. I couldn't get my ears pierced when I was a child. I didn't get my ears pierced until I had to beg for it. We get these rules and we're like, okay, yeah, we got to listen to them because, you know, I'm sure you have my best interest at heart and I want to be submissive. And
Yeah.
So we just go through this thing where we're like, okay, I guess I better listen to the rules. But I think it's something that we're just going to have to consciously say, I'm going to stand firm in my femininity.
Technology. Is this Miss Michala?
It is.
How are you? I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm
so glad you're a part of this. I'm just so delighted.
I'm excited. I'm really, really excited. I love these sorts of conversations, and I don't get to have them often, so I'm really excited.
Right. I mean, we all don't have them enough, and so that's why platforms like this was, number one, out of an act of pure obedience, but an audacity and a boldness too, because it's not such a popular topic. It probably is laced in provocativeness, and that's all right. I don't mind being a little bit of that either. But I'm so excited about you being here because we have the most interesting meeting story. Like, literally, now, Michala, I'm an open book. I don't know how open you are. But literally, we were at the bar.
We were down the street from my apartment. What's the name of it's called?
Nantucket.
Nantucket. They have really, really good food, y'all. Pull up. I go to that bar a lot to get food.
Yes.
And I literally went to get food that day, and she walked in.
Yep.
And I was sitting there by myself eating, living my best life.
You were.
And she walked in, and we started chopping it up, and
immediately
made the connection.
Immediately. And we hugged goodbye.
Yeah.
So I just love organic meetups like that, you know, where it's not forced, it's not planned, it's just you're eating, I'm waiting on my food, and so girl, what you want to, you know? And that's exactly how it was. So I'm so glad you're here as a part of our third installment of You Forgot to Teach Me How to Be a Girl. This has been such a great treat, I believe, and I'm looking forward to resuming these again, probably in the fall sometime, because like this is a conversation that doesn't need to go away. And so I'm so excited that you get to share your experience and your voice into this femininity ethos that we are creating that has spiritual backing. So with everyone so far, I've asked them the same thing. Where did you grow up? And what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
I grew up in Marion, South Carolina. It is a very small town in South Carolina, about 45 minutes or so from Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
And when I was smaller, I thought I was going to become a doctor.
Okay.
Because I fell in love with the medical field, and I still do have love for the medical field. I just hate science. Well, not hate it, but learning it, I didn't like it. I fell in love with the medical field because I was always in and out of hospitals because I was born with a spinal disorder. And so I was constantly in and out of the hospital. And so the medical field sparked my interest. And so growing up, I thought, oh, being a doctor would be cool. But then I got to high school and I took AP biology and I absolutely hated the class. I was like, you know, this is not for me.
Yeah.
But I was taking a government and politics class at the same time, and I really, really liked it. So I was like, oh, maybe I should try the legal field. And so, yeah, I made the transition.
So here you are. So not only did we connect because of the church thing, the church girl vibes, but also because you are a legal eagle.
Yes.
And I believe you're graduating, right?
Yes, I am. Oh my God, CB, I didn't know that you know the girl who does my hair from back home, Chronicle, DeWitt.
Girl, don't do Chronicle.
I'm
a church girl too.
Yes. I was talking to her about you. She saw that we were following each other on social media. She was like, I didn't know you knew CB. I was like, we met when I was out one day.
Yeah.
Something to eat. And she was like, oh, I used to do her hair.
Yeah, she surely did. Crime used to do everybody's hair. She was such a great jewel. I haven't seen her in years, but I'm sure she's still singing soprano because she had a high voice. So tell me about, like, when you were a little girl, we're going to stay right there for a second. When you were a little girl, who did you look up to on television? Did you have any favorite actresses? And if so, why was that one the favorite?
I still am a fan of Felicia Rashad. I love her.
Everybody keeps saying
really? She's my favorite. I used to love the Cosby Show. And so watching her as a mom, watching her as an attorney, watching her just do her thing, to me, she's literally the living embodiment of femininity. I love her. It's like she just exudes this grace. Yeah. And she just captured my heart from the first time I saw her on the Cosby Show.
Oh my gosh. So you grew up in the church. We want to shout out your church.
Yes. The Door Hope Christian Church in Marion, South Carolina, where my pastors are also my parents, Bishop Michael and Pastor Michala Blue.
Oh my goodness. So this is very interesting, you guys, because I don't want you to get a whooping when you get home, girl. Her parents are actually her pastor and first lady, and we're going to get into that a little bit because you saw your dad as bishop. Is he a bishop or Bishop Blue? And then you also saw him as daddy. So that gets really tricky with PKs.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Bishop Blue, we love you.
Yes.
So tell me about church life. What was that like for you?
Church life was it could get demanding at times. We were in church no less than 3 times a week.
Okay.
Sunday, Tuesday, they flip-flop it now, so it was Tuesday night Bible study. Well, actually Tuesday night prayer back then, and then Thursday night Bible study. Actually I lied. When we first started out, it was 4 times a week. We had Tuesday night Bible study, Wednesday night youth night, Thursday night prayer, and then Sunday service. So when I was younger, in my younger years, like elementary aged on back, we were in church 4 times a week at least. And that's not counting if my dad had to preach out somewhere and we might travel with him. That's not counting us just visiting other churches. We pulled back a little bit once I got older. We did have that conversation with my dad. He felt like we needed to be, he knew that we were going to be engaged in extracurricular activities at school, and he wanted to be present for that. So he actually did at one point rearrange the entire church schedule just so that he could play dad.
Oh, wow.
And make sure that he was present for us. So yeah.
Wow, that is beautiful because not too many, that I know of, have actually done that or were willing to do that. It was like, this is what it is, you know?
Choir rehearsal. Well, see, our choir rehearsal used to be after Bible study. So we didn't have to come back. We didn't have to make that run again.
Really?
Yeah.
But so what time did you get home?
Well, I was about to say, we used to be there late night. It was late night, for sure. But
oh, my God. So tell me about the rules at Bishop Blue's church. What type of rules were present there, or doctrine?
Yeah. So, hey, Monty. I love our church because I always tell people we are a non-denominational church, but we have roots in the apostolic faith. My parents grew up in apostolic churches. My dad, he has an interesting background. He went to a Baptist church for a point in his life. He went to an apostolic church for a point in his life. My mom's parents were also pastors, and they were pastors of an apostolic church, which interestingly enough, my parents also pastor that church now. So that church is in Jersey, and then our church is in South Carolina. So they're back and forth. So the rules that we had weren't as strict as I can remember other churches' rules being. We were allowed to wear pants, but that didn't come along until my father started pastoring. They didn't believe in that initially, but then they came around. So we were allowed to wear pants. I couldn't get my ears pierced when I was a child. I didn't get my ears pierced until I had to beg for it. And he finally let me get my ears pierced when I was like 13, I think. And my mom, she didn't get hers pierced until she was like 40. But we were allowed to wear makeup. We didn't have to cover our heads. We dressed modestly. We were allowed to dress fashionably, but we just had to do so in a modest manner. Meaning I wasn't allowed to wear like spaghetti straps or things like that in church. I could probably get away with it if we going to the beach or something, but nothing too short ever. Things like that. No low cleavage.
Was this a way to appease men? Do you think?
I don't necessarily. It didn't register with me that way. I was just always taught that. Well, now that you say that, to a certain extent, yeah, because my mom's favorite line was, "Well, leave something to the imagination. What your husband gonna have?" So,
girl, so now you only do what he gonna have.
So now that I'm thinking about it, yes and no. But I just also feel as though when you're a woman of standard, there's a certain way that you carry yourself, and I just don't my personal belief is we shouldn't have it all hanging out for the world to see. Because when as women of standard, we should carry ourselves as such. So that's my personal belief. But I don't think it was all rooted in appeasing men.
Okay. Okay. And so again, your mom is the first lady of the church. Other than you being active in extracurricular in, I guess, high school, middle school, or whatever, and them sort of altering the way that the church flows because of you, which is so great. I mean, you need to send him flowers for that. What were some things that you needed or you wish it was different seeing your parents in such an authoritative role that demanded them? And how was it like growing up as the pastor's daughter?
I was always in the spotlight, no matter how much I tried to hide. And I feel like I got it worse than my brother. Like, my brother is so low key, and he lives his own life, child. We don't even know what he got going on half the time. So he's so low key. And so because of that, though, I ended up in the spotlight a lot of the times because it was just me. And as much as it's like I became everybody's role model by default. So I was forced to carry myself in a certain way, even if I didn't feel, the best. I may have been battling mental health that day, or something may have happened at school that, kind of threw me out of my element. I was still forced to put on a brave face because we got to go to church tonight, and these people look up to you. So it took a toll on me emotionally, especially when I got to adolescence. And I also felt like for a while, I felt like I couldn't be vulnerable and be honest about what it was. Some of the things that I was dealing with, because I'm like, these people look up to you, and you can't, if they see any sign of weakness, it's like you're gonna let them down. So it was definitely difficult for me to maneuver my personal emotions while being in the spotlight all the time. And my parents are not only pastors of a local church, but my father is the bishop of an organization of churches. So I have people looking at me from different states and different countries, and so it got really, really heavy at one point. But what I will say is my parents have been super supportive. They did all that they could to make sure we felt like we were supported, and that we were their first priority, and that if we needed anything, or if we felt neglected, or if they made sure that we didn't feel that. So that's one thing I can definitely say. My experience has been growing up in the church.
Absolutely. And did you ever find that there was two versions of you, or did you feel that pressure also at school?
Yeah, no. So that's funny. So my dad wears a lot of hats.
Oh, no.
So he was also an English teacher for 25 years, right? So he taught at my high school until I was a sophomore, and then he retired because his travel schedule got too hectic. And so he was there. So my friends knew Michala, but I had to be, Miss Prim and proper whenever I'm passing my dad in the hallway, or when we get to church. So there was definitely two versions of myself, because you can't show some stuff to everybody.
Right. But and then it sounds like you can't escape. Daddy. He was everywhere. I'm the product also of my mom was actually my homeroom teacher, my teacher in the 7th grade, and I tried out for cheerleading that year in 7th grade. I didn't make it because I just didn't smile. I used to not smile ever. And so because my mom was faculty, the cheerleading coach came to her and was like, listen, she didn't necessarily make it, but if you want her on there, and she's talking about, no, she don't have to be up there, because then it would have taken me to wear the wardrobe, which cheerleaders show their panties. And I was all about showing our panties. And so it took a long time for me to get over that. Like, nepotism. Like, just say yes, but.
And I can remember a similar experience. I cheered when I was, like, in elementary school. I didn't really do it. And by the time I got out of elementary school, I was like, this is not for me. I hate it here. I was a nerd. But my dad wasn't fond of some of the cheers that we did, because it was like hip shaking and, the sassy movements. And he just was not having it. He did not like it. So my mom, though, had a conversation with him. I love my mom. My mom had to have a conversation with him, be like, don't view it that way. It's just, they're just cheering for the team, and it's entertainment, and they have to move in ways that are entertaining. It's just dance, So he got over it eventually, but I've definitely had a similar experience.
See, and it was like my pastor's daughters were majorettes. So the majorettes wore like leotards, what Beyonce wears them. And like they had no problem wearing, they could just be out free with it. And I'm like, but they get to wear this.
Yeah.
Like, why can't they just, my parents it was our church rules. We were like you, we were non-denominational. Like, it really was no rules, honestly. And but my parents had rules from my mother's side of the family, who was very, very strict. Like, women couldn't do anything. And I say women because men got away with so much more.
Yeah, they typically do. They do.
Yeah, they do. But like, they didn't have to worry about not wearing pants or like my ears pierced or whatever, all those kinds of things. Maybe they want a tattoo. I don't know what it is that guys desire, but as teenagers growing up in church. But for girls, it was like we couldn't do anything. We were kind of taught to just be a wife, so to speak, just kind of preparing ourselves to either be a first lady or a wife. And so I want to pivot a little bit to your mom. So your mom is not only your beautiful mother, but she's the first lady. And a lot of organizations or entities that are religious based has that first lady, and she seems larger than life. She's just the big role model, big example of how to be as a woman, how to be as a wife, and just everything. So I'm curious to your experience as watching your mom as first lady.
So my mom is not your typical first lady. She's not the larger than life first lady. She's very down to earth.
Okay.
She's very, she likes to joke and laugh, mingle with people. So she's like your homegirl's homegirl.
Okay.
That's how I describe her. And so watching her though, hey Destiny. Watching her though, I noticed. So I made this comparison to a friend the other day. I was telling them that a lot of times first ladies get thrown into the spotlight because we as a people make the assumption that just because she's married to the pastor, she's called to pastor too, and that's not always the case. Your ministry as your first lady primarily is to your husband, and my mom embodied that to the T. Of course, the anointing is on. My mom is a phenomenal singer, and so she would sing often. Okay. She preaches as well, and so she would preach sometimes. We can't get her to preach that often. She doesn't like it, but she preaches well. But one thing I will say is her as first lady, her role, and she wore it so well, her role and her responsibility was to my dad first. And she covered him in ways that you can't even imagine. My dad is all over. If you know my dad, there's a couple people in here who knows my dad, and y'all know that it takes a special person to be married to Michala Blue. And my mom, she has done a phenomenal job. Even when it comes down to little stuff like making sure he has his towels when he's preaching, because my dad is very forgetful too. So like making sure he has his towels when he's preaching, making sure he has the right kind of teas to drink because he uses his throat like he sings. Yeah. Like little stuff like that, things that a wife would do. Yeah. She doesn't take the first lady role and use it as a platform to make herself grand or big herself up. And that's what I can appreciate about her. She wears that hat well.
Absolutely. So what did you see, or what were you taught about femininity then growing up in the church? What did you see, or was it allowed to be free and expressed ever?
One thing that we learned at Door of Hope is women, and a lot of churches teach this, but we weren't taught this. Hey, Pastor Marcus. Oh, that's my cousin Marcus. Hey, Marcus. We were taught that men and women were created in God's image after his likeness. The female is not the inferior race of human being. We were taught that deliberately, and so we were actually encouraged to embrace our femininity. It wasn't whether you're married or single. We were taught you're a woman and you're not an afterthought. You weren't an afterthought to God just because Adam came first. You weren't just let me let me throw something together.
Yeah.
You're not an afterthought. You are just as significant as the male. And so that's something that we were always taught. When it comes to what I will say is, in our faith in general, though, I do believe that femininity is only viewed from the lens of being a wife versus being a sister, being a mom, being an aunt, being a friend. We do get the whole lecture on, oh, well, you're gonna be somebody's wife one day, or you get it all the time in church. But what I will say is that my church, I feel like it's definitely been a very, very even playing field when it comes to allowing us to embrace our femininity from the various aspects that it exists in.
Right. That's very good to hear and to know, because that's not the case for everyone else. My grandmother was one of those pillars in her community and her church when she was alive. And so there were women that came up sitting at her feet in the church, and the church was a family church, so everybody is related. And what she taught very well was how to be a wife. I mean, my first article that was published in a magazine was my experience, and it was titled, and I'm quoting her, I don't talk like this, "Don't no man want no woman who can't cook no biscuits." So, so I had to come in the kitchen at 11 years old and learn how to make biscuits, because that's how you got to get them husband. Mm-hmm. And girl, I've been making biscuits ever since.
Well, I want some biscuits.
So they did that piece well. And so, Michala, here's something interesting that's going to be very familiar to you, I'm sure. We have a situation where there's a woman named Naomi. And Naomi is kind of shepherding Ruth. But she does it differently than, I would say, you got to go in here and cook the biscuits that my grandmother did. But she tapped into what I believe Ruth's femininity. It was this man, this rich man, wealthy man, is overseeing these fields. He's the owner, and you have an opportunity to become his wife, and not only that, but the legacy of Jesus Christ, which is exactly what happened. And so it takes a special woman that not only looks at the part of, like, you just have to be a wife, but what does the sensuality of femininity looks like, where she told Ruth, wear this and do this, and lay at his feet and all that kind of thing or whatever. So I ask, who was your Naomi?
Ooh, that's a good question.
You can say me.
Yeah, I feel like you've been that person. I've never viewed it that way, but I have a very dear friend, and she's so feminine, so graceful. I'm really shocked she's not on here. She's probably traveling because she had to go home this weekend.
Oh my goodness.
Mia McPhail. I'm gonna send you her page when we get off
Please
here.
Do.
She is the ultimate feminine energy. Anytime I'm around her, I just feel so dainty and light.
Yeah.
That's her. And so I told her before, I said, I'm single, so I'm on the dating scene. And I told her, I said, I need some ladylike lessons from you.
Yeah.
Because I tend to be a little rough around the edges, and I'm not always the daintiest and the proper princess, but she is. She's like that all the time. So G is my Naomi for sure.
She is your Naomi. Did you have any Naomis in church, or she was from the church?
She's from church.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Because they show up in various roles. So obviously, if it is a desire or even a calling to be a wife, you need those people like my grandmother that kind of, you can sit at their feet and just glean from their wisdom of this is what it looks like for them. But also, as my cousin says, you just chew the meat, spit out the bones, that type of thing, because they're going to speak to a certain era that we're just not in anymore. But you also need those women that, just like your friend, just really tapped into the other constructs and nooks and crannies of femininity. And I think that the church itself has the beautiful opportunity to be those things as well. And knowing that you had a friend in the church that could kind of, whether or not you guys could do it openly. I don't know if it was a women's night service that y'all could have those type of conversations, or whether y'all just went to the bathroom and whispered real good, like, girl, let me tell you. But having those Naomis are really important because, again, Ruth was able to transition from being this Moabite woman that had nothing to do with Judah or Jerusalem or anything.
Yeah.
She was in this strange land, and here it was that her mother-in-law really coached her into that. And I think the church has a great opportunity to be that for so many of us that want to be married. Because there's nothing wrong with wanting to be married either.
Yeah. I certainly want to be married. And now when I'm thinking about it, my grandmother has actually been very instrumental in that role as well. But her perspective has been a little different. So she's been coaching me a lot more recently from the space of what not to do, because she was married for a long time. My grandfather passed away in 2015, and they had been married for 60 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So she went through a lot in her marriage though, and so right now we've been in the space of, let me tell you what not to do.
Yeah. And those things are helpful as well because that's wisdom.
Yeah.
And wisdom is a she. Wisdom is feminine as well. But we won't touch on that part of it. So I want to know, I'm curious to know, what was your first introduction to God? What was God, or what were you taught about God? Was he angry? Was he very judgmental? Was he this old man with a beard? What was your first introduction to God?
My first introduction to God that I can remember, because I've been in church all my life, but my first introduction to God that I can remember is he's a good God, he's a merciful God, he's a just God. And so those three things, yeah. So even though the balance is, even though when justice comes in, I may deserve what I get, he's a merciful God, so he ain't gonna give me what I deserve.
Yeah, no.
So
that's so beautiful too.
Yeah.
Because wow, if we got what we deserve, we might not even have this live,
right,
at all. But that's the beauty of God. And so many of us have been taught just the antithesis of that, that God is angry, ready to, turn up.
Yeah.
There's sometimes I'm mad at people, and I'll say this old quote. My childhood pastor used to say, not my teenage pastor, but the years before that, he would say, when God placed judgment on you, it ain't nothing you can do to get it off. And it just seemed like, yeah, he used to always preach that. And so, like, if I'm mad at somebody, I'm like, child, when God put judgment on them, there ain't nothing they can do to get it on.
We love to take the word and use it to hurt.
Girl, you better leave me alone. But that is the story of how God is being introduced to so many people. As now, Jesus is different. Jesus was love, but God's self was more so not playing with anyone. And you see the tone of that, the nature of that a little bit in the Old Testament, just with God not playing around a lot with the children of Israel, just very frustrated over it. Like, you touch this mountain, you're gonna die. Just period. But because of Jesus Christ, we do have access to this presentation of God that I don't know if it was done intentionally, but it's kind of withheld to stir up this type of fear in us. The fear of sin, the fear of being a woman who has desires to move their hips, sway their hips a little bit more in their walk, to have correct posture and not be ashamed that their breast size is a little bit bigger, or I know some people, Michala, I know some people now that will not wear an appropriate bra because it will bring attention to that area. So appropriate bra means a bra that'll sit them things up, They won't do that because they want to diminish what femininity looks like, because that's so frowned upon. I want to know, because it doesn't seem like your church was the church that called people out, that shamed women if they were pregnant out of wedlock and all that kind of stuff that other people may have experienced. I want to know, your take on diminishing femininity and ways that you may have experienced it yourself, not necessarily knowing that it was maybe religious implications here, undertones or whatever, but just what your thoughts are about diminished femininity.
I just think that it's something that we as women are gonna have to make a conscious decision to combat and to not conform with, because it's almost as if I think it's just it's our nature to be submissive, right? Yeah. And so we get these rules and we're like, okay, yeah, we gotta listen to them because I'm sure you have my best interest at heart and I want to be submissive. And yeah. So we just go through this thing where we're like, okay, I guess I better listen to the rules. But I think it's something that we're just gonna have to consciously say, I'm going to stand firm in my femininity. I tell my mom this all the time because you've seen me in person. I'm a little curvy. Yeah. And my mom is like, oh, this is too tight. You should. And I'm like, God knew what he was giving me when he gave it to me.
That's right.
And if he didn't want me to embrace it, hey Brittany, if he didn't want me to embrace it, he wouldn't have given it to me.
Right.
And so it took a lot for me to get there though, because I started feeling out whenever I was in high school, and it was always, oh, this is too tight, your jeans are too tight, your dress is too tight, and I'm like, it's actually the right size.
Wow.
It's not tight at all. And so it took a lot for me to. I had to make a conscious decision. I'm just gonna embrace it. It doesn't really matter what people say. God gave it to me, and if he gave it to me, he meant for me to have it.
How were you coming up with this concept, this thought process?
Probably like 17, 18.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Probably like 17, 18. And even then though, it was like some back and forth. There was like a tug of war in my head, like, oh, I want to, be modest. I don't want to cause anybody to fall, because that's another thing in church. Even when I go to church, still to this day, thank you, C. Oh, it's always tasteful. Still to this day, when I go to church, if I know I'm going to be moving around a lot and praising, I'll double up on girdles to make sure I'm not shaking around. Because my dress may fit a little tight, but I don't want to distract the men of God.
Yeah. So I think that's thoughtful, though. I mean,
Yeah, so it's thoughts like that I had to put together in my head. Okay, how do I find the balance of embracing my femininity, but also doing it tastefully? Because I don't want to have, everything just hanging out because I'm saying God gave it to me. Because he gave it to me, but he gave me clothes as well, and therefore
Right.
So
that is something. You mentioned earlier that you had to beg to get your ears pierced at 13. Growing up, did you ever see your mom print in the mirror? Like, was she? And is that how did you learn how to do your makeup? And
funny story. I used to steal my mom's makeup in middle school. She hated it. So I would steal her eyeshadow. It was Fashion Fair. The color was Persian.
Yes, Fashion Fair.
And I would steal her makeup. I would take it with me to school. I would do my eyeshadow at school. And then she would come pick me up. She'd be like, is that eyeshadow in your eyes? Take it off right now. Where'd you get it from?
Oh my God.
So that was when I first started experimenting with makeup. But I also was a part-time makeup artist in college. And so I did makeup I would always plan makeup all throughout high school. And then I started my business in college. So I learned by stealing my mom's makeup. And then once I got older, watching YouTube videos and just practicing. And eventually we got to where we are.
Yeah. It's some that, grow up not being able to wear makeup. And so when they go off to college, they don't really know what to do. I was one of those girls. I have, I had a great course teacher, Mrs. Hodge. May she rest in peace. But she was so instrumental in my femininity growing up. So she was definitely one of my Naomis. But some of her rules that she required of us as a course, especially the ladies, was very much so you were going to show up beautiful. That was her thing. You're going to put on you some lipstick. You're going to wear high heels. The only reason I could wear high heels in the 9th and 10th grade is because my grade depended on it. Otherwise, Charles and Iris would have been like, absolutely not. You better come way down to the floor. Wear some flats. So, but because Miss Hodge required this thing, it just woke up something in me secretly. it couldn't live outside of the constraints of shame because I was just buried inside of it because that's what the church taught me. The church had humility as synonymous for lowliness and really thinking lowly of yourself and low self-esteem. I don't know if they intended to do that, Michala, but that's just one of the things that happened.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to become aware of it and still go on with the narrative because everything has some kind of implication of whether it's moving in a positive light or whether it's moving in a direction that why are all these girls so sad, but I'm begging more organizations that haven't quite crossed over to where your church is and where my teenage church is or whatever to start paying attention to the girls because teenagers are telling. A sad teenager is not normal. That's the best years of your life. And when you grow up into an atmosphere with so much shame and so many rules and doctrines, when you go off to college and you're able to do what you want to do, they say those are the worst ones or whatever. Now, I was able to, just stay close to the fence. I knew what I wasn't going to do it so much. Yeah. That was just me, because I don't know why I want to, though. Right. I want to real bad. It just won't happen. Like, I'm such a good girl, but when it comes to, like, I tried to arch my eyebrows and I, nearly cut it off myself. I just was seeing other people on the campus like, okay, these girls, they're from New York, or whatever, and so let me do that and did it wrong. I spent time wearing the wrong color foundation and all those kind of stuff. And so I didn't have First Lady Blue to look at in the mirror and like, okay, this is how we do it because makeup was only used. My grandmother only allowed my mom and her sisters to use it to take the shine off their face.
Well, that was primarily what my mom did. She would take the Fashion Fair compact with the red sponge. She had that.
Yep.
And she would take the shine off of her face. And then once I got older, by the time I hit middle school age, she was doing like a little bit of shadow and stuff. Yeah. But like I said, she came from an apostolic church. There were no pants. They couldn't do extracurricular activities like go to the movies, play basketball, stuff like that. It was really, really strict for her growing up.
So she probably wanted something different from you. But I want to present to you, if you allow me, what if taking the shine off really is a metaphor for diminishing your light and femininity? Like, I like a good glow.
Okay.
And my feminine light glows. Right. And so what if we teach women, like, instead of being the mattifiers, but to be the women that glow, allow their femininity to shine and no longer diminish it. I would love to see the church shift up into that.
Yeah.
So what you say?
No. I was reading C's comment. She said what you said was good, and I was agreeing.
So, Michala, we're running here. I neglected to ask on my first two installments, and I said I wrote it down just to make sure that I asked this because you guys, I am saved. Like, I am a Christian. Like, I'm very spiritual and all of this thing. But I want to ask you, I would love to know your salvation story. What made you decide, you know what, I'm going to accept Christ as my Savior?
Yeah. So I was around 8. Yep, I got baptized when I was 8. I was 8 years old. And I can remember having this 8 is still preteen years, but you're starting to have a sense of self and like this self-awareness.
Absolutely.
And I can remember, like I said, I was born with the spinal disorder that resulted in some physical challenges. And so I can remember having this question of why and this question of who am I outside of this health challenge that I have, because it had begun to like overtake my life.
Yeah.
So I had this yearning to figure out who I was and my purpose. And I felt as though, and looking back, it was the Holy Spirit, but I felt as though the only way I was going to be able to figure that out is to accept Jesus into my heart.
Oh, wow.
So that was what drove me. That was what drove me to salvation. And then I told my parents shortly thereafter. Well, we did the prayer, and then shortly thereafter, I got baptized. And the rest has been history. But that was really what it was. And as a matter of fact, I was seated when you met me, so you probably didn't even notice. But I wear braces on both legs.
Mm-mm.
And so, as a woman, that affects what you look like sometimes.
Okay.
And I don't wear them all the time, but that affects what you look like sometimes. And even that I had to really, really sit with that, because that definitely took a toll on how I viewed myself as a woman. Because we as women, we like to look nice, and there's a certain appearance that we want to have, and so that even took a toll on my femininity as well. But back to your original question, that was actually what prompted me to see Christ.
Wow. You've been living for Jesus for a long time, girl.
For a long time.
I want to talk about those braces, or
okay,
as you called it. So you said it took a toll on your femininity. How are you able to overcome that? And have you leaned into the little nuggets you learned along the way of your church life, your spiritual journey, to really hone into, oh no, this is not going to define anything?
Yeah. It took some time. Like I said, I went through a really bad depression in 2015 about it. And that was when I really, really sat with it. And I realized, during that time, I realized, what has this stopped? That was literally the question that I came to. You have this issue, but you're in college. In 2015, I was still in college. What has this stopped? You graduated high school. You're soaring in college. I had just crossed AKA. What has this stopped?
Right.
And so I had to come to terms with myself. Although, God's intention is always what I bring myself back to. The world that we see today isn't what God intended for the world to be. And that's literally what I have to bring myself back to all the time. What I'm struggling with isn't what God intended for me to struggle with. And we know the story of the fall of man and the introduction of sin into the world.
Yeah.
And how it had its effects. And I just think that that because I know his intent, it just gives me peace, because I know that it wasn't him who gave it to me. And I think that's why I was struggling with it so bad. Like I said, I had the question of why did you let this happen? Why would you do this? Why? And in reality, it was never even him. So I had to come to grips with that and just I got to know him in a more intimate way. And it's almost like when you're in a relationship with somebody and they do something, or something may happen that's not the norm in the relationship, or they may cause you a little discomfort or something, and that's not their intent, because their heart, because you're in such a close relationship with them. It's like, once you know someone's heart, you're able to better accept the things that they may do, or that may allow, or that may happen, that cause you a little bit of friction, but that person doesn't mean you any harm. And so that was what I had to come to grips with.
That's so beautiful. Like, I would have never known. And you didn't stand up, because when I was getting ready to leave, we hugged back.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I wouldn't. So I applaud you for walking in your truth and asking yourself, what has it stopped? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're still pretty. You're still, I assume boys want to date you, or girls.
Yeah. Exactly. Girl.
So it's not stopping anything, and that's the reality of it. And when you are aware of that, you can go forward in so much grace and confidence. Mm-hmm. Because the one thing that I would love to see women soar in, especially in the faith space, is confidence. And we other women, because here's what I believe, Michala. I believe a man came up with the concept and idea of what a woman should look like and do in church. But I believe that a woman perpetuates it. Mm-hmm. So the man throws the rock, hide his hand. The woman says, I did it. don't come for him, come for me, you know? And they pass it down generation to generation to generation. And so it's us fighting each other the most. You're not looking the way that I think a woman of God should look. So I come for you in all types of ways. I mean, I got to the point at church telling them, if you sending me a prayer cloth, it better be Hermes at this point. Like, no more prayer cloth. Like, I know how to sit right. This guy taught me how to sit and cross at my ankles.
Right.
How to show me to cross at my ankles. I'm not showing my panties, but they act like I will show my panties so bad at church. So, but it was women doing that every time. It was, my name is Yolanda or whatever, and so they call me Yolanda then, but they were like, Yolanda in her short dresses. I was just always in trouble over an outfit, but it was women that were doing it. I mean, they even made, now my bishop was old, an old man. I remember I got up to direct the choir. They let me direct the choir one Sunday, and the youth advisors at the time said Bishop couldn't hold his head up because he was trying not to look at my legs because my dress was short. And I always was confused because my mama house is like Fort Knox. If you can't wear a slip with it, you ain't wearing it. You know, it's not gonna be short. It's got to be slip length and whatever. But they just act like it was so short, girl. And so other women were just always constantly putting me down at church, in the church spaces, and it was such the opposite in the world, so to speak. You know, when I got to North Carolina Central, it was like, oh, we love how she dresses. And so I embraced that part because I loved it. And I wish that the church could be a more safe space for women to just show up in their beauty and their elegance and their femininity without having to put us down because we don't measure up to this standard of whatever a man came up with. That man's dead and gone. Not perpetuating this message, you know? Yeah. So I want to talk to you about your, like, okay, women of the Bible, because you're a preacher kid. I'm testing your Sunday school years.
Oh, Lord.
So if you were able to have a brunch, an elegant brunch, or the way that you do it, you don't have to do it like me, Michala, but you know, mine is going to be good. So you're having a brunch. Who are some women of the Bible that you want there at that table, and why?
Who are some? Deborah, for sure.
Oh, tell me why before you go on.
She is just such a strong.
You love strong women.
I love strong women, and she is such a strong woman to me.
Because Claire Huxtable got on my nerves.
I love a strong woman.
I didn't want to say it. But Claire Huxtable, I was so sick of her telling Cliff what to do. Like, leave him alone. But go ahead, Deborah.
Let's see. Who else? There's not much about her in the Bible, but because I love her husband, and I feel as though it would take a special woman to undergird him, Zipporah.
Who?
Zipporah. Moses' wife. It takes a different type of woman to be able to undergird that kind of ministry. And I would love to sit down and talk to her.
She was black.
Yes, she was. Who else?
That was a good one, girl.
Yeah. You know, I do want to talk to Mary.
What you want to talk to her about?
I want to have a conversation with Mary because Mary, let's talk about. Here's what I would want to talk to her about. How did she get through the ridicule that she must have experienced being pregnant and she wasn't married yet? I'm sure they had everything in the world to say about her.
Okay, so I'll propose this.
Okay.
So there's a book of the Bible that we, in theology, we had that conversation. I'm at Boston College. It's called the Evangelium of James. So the book of James that talks a lot in extent about Mary.
Really?
And Mary was groomed for everything that happened to her.
Really?
According to this book.
Okay.
That's not in the Holy Bible.
Yeah.
But it is part of the lost letters, just like the Bible was a collection of lost letters. Where she lived in the temple and was groomed to be, they always knew she was going to be the chosen one. She just walked with a halo around her. I think they said she went into the temple at 3 years old. And so the angel...
What's the name of this book?
The Evangelium, the book of James.
Okay.
So James has a book in the King James Bible, but he also has more that he says. And he tells you about just Mary's lifestyle. Even Joseph. Joseph was older. He had children. We don't know still if he was married. I mean, if he was widowed, because he had children. And we also don't know if he was dead during the times that Mark, Matthew, and Luke records Mary's journey in with Jesus Christ. Joseph wasn't there. Like, no one recorded that. And that was 3 different accounts of different people.
I'm going to have to read that, because I always thought about, when you were talking about earlier, how pregnant women, when you get pregnant out of wedlock in church, and it's this big fiasco. I always, every time I think about Mary, I think about that. I'm like, I know they were ripping her to shreds.
Girl, Mary would be put out and not believed. You can convince them, and that's so funny you brought that up, because I am doing a series soon called Father Forgive Us for we have sinned, a conversation with women who were shamed by the church. So that's coming up. That's very vulnerable, because, you know, it was real life people that had to stand up before the church and confess whatever to them and for grace or whatever. But yeah, Mary did go through a lot. I mean, she had to tell Joseph about it, but the angel told him. So Zipporah, Deborah.
One more.
Who else?
Sarah.
Who?
Sarah. I need a lesson on patience, because that woman wanted a baby.
Girl, I do not like Sarah, but go ahead.
Why you don't like my girl?
I ain't getting into this with you, because
we can get into it offline.
We don't have to, because Sarah said some things that I didn't. Okay, so I ride hard for Hagar.
I like Hagar. Hagar can come too.
Yeah, I ride hard for her. Hagar. But what Sarah did and said to her, like when you break down, she says some word in Hebrew that doesn't translate the same in English.
Oh, so that's probably why I don't know about it.
So when it translates in Hebrew, it translates as "you black dummy." And so I was like, you know, Sarah, you working on me not liking you.
Don't break my heart.
I know, but she can come to your little brunch. Go ahead.
Oh my God. Okay, I think that was the last one.
Okay, so, oh my gosh. But you said Sarah teaches you patience, because her husband had patience too, right? She teaches you patience but did she have patience because she laughed?
She did. She definitely laughed. But I feel like ultimately, it did take a significant amount of patience. I feel like even though she laughed, ultimately she did have patience.
Yeah. Okay. We're winding down, so we have this part of the conversation that I like to call my fun round.
Okay.
So I'm gonna fire out questions and you just have fun with it. What song do you have on repeat right now? Like, what song we need to go download?
Honestly, I've been in my Beyonce bag lately.
Really? Which one? Which bag?
Renaissance, the whole album. Specifically though, I've been listening to the Cuff It remix. I don't know, it's just a vibe for me. I also really like Afro beats, so I've been listening to a lot of Burna Boy.
That too.
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Burna Boy. I really wish he has a concert in New York that I want to go to, but it's during bar prep. I'm really sad about it, so I can't go. Yeah.
What's your favorite fragrance right now?
My favorite fragrance is Dylan Blue by Versace.
Really? Michala.
What? We just disagree on a lot. We gotta talk offline, sis. We gotta get it together.
You can get that at the TJ Maxx, girl. We want you to get something else.
No, baby. It's something about different people's ketones and how it meshes with different fragrances.
Yeah.
For me, I love how it smells on me. amazing.
It's a good smell. I remember it in undergrad. But do you love Jo Malone at all?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely.
We can meet at the stack.
Yes.
When do you feel most feminine?
When I get my hair done.
Oh.
That's when I feel most feminine. And I think it's because I'm sitting in the salon around all these other women. There's good conversation. We can relate on so many different levels. So I just feel like I'm in the midst of like a sisterhood.
That's
and that
so
makes
dope.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of hair salons for us as well. Like, it's more than just the hairstyle, because chances are I'm going to have to go home and fix it the way I really want to anyway. But just being there and having those conversations is just really, really means a lot. But don't be shady either. Like, don't talk about people when they leave the salon.
Right.
Yeah. Which one would you pick? Or you might pick all three: meditation, worship, or journaling?
I'm going to go with worship.
Do you worship on the regular?
I do. I have a set morning routine. I wake up, I do a prayer, and have a worship segment, and then get ready for my day.
Oh my gosh. Any playlists any songs we need to...
I'm going to send you my playlist.
Okay.
I'm going to send you my playlist. I am, right now, I have been on like old school stuff. So I've been listening to Shayna Wilson. I've been listening to she's out of Detroit.
The girl on the show, the gospel show.
But I was on her before I realized she was on the show. But she's really good. And when it comes to worship,
I just be staring at them like, what?
Literally, it's a mess. I was like, Shayna, I thought so much higher of you.
Like, what is happening?
Why are you doing this? But anyway, she has good worship songs. Todd Delaney. I love Todd. And I like like I said, I like old school gospel. So I listen to like
the Mighty Clouds.
No.
Okay.
Like Tremaine Hawkins.
And
yeah. Some people like the Winans and stuff like that.
You like Detroit, girl.
Yeah.
What is your dream vacation spot?
She was saying Shayna takes her there too. Shayna has the worship jams, okay? But
I need to listen to Shayna. I just saw her on the show.
Yeah.
I was just like,
I really hate that she's on there because I really like. She held a special place. She still does. And when it comes to like being a worship leader, and so when I saw her on there, I was like, no, Shayna.
I know. That's kind of how I felt with Mary when they did their reality show. I was like, I wish they had never done this, because to me they were just flawless. Yeah. And then they did the show. But I like Erica. It's the other one that I just can't.
Yeah, she did a bit. She did a bit much.
Oh,
she did.
So what's your dream vacay spot?
Bora Bora. Yes. I absolutely have to go. I need to stay in one of the overwater bungalows. Yeah, and just live my best life.
What's the name of the church?
What's
the name of your church?
Oh, the Door of Hope Christian Church in Marion, South Carolina.
The Door of Hope. She wants to go to Bora Bora.
I like to go to Bora Bora.
Found in finance, so this girl done got a law degree for y'all. So
yes.
Girl,
yes,
to do that. Are you a red lipstick girl or a nude lipstick?
I am for sure a nude lipstick girl.
Okay.
But I love both.
Okay. Now, we have one more question after this, but this one, you mentioned before, early in the conversation, I said we're going to get to that. You mentioned about modesty and, how you subscribe to that. Can Christian women be devout and sexy or not?
Yeah. No, I think we absolutely can. And I think I am to a certain extent. But
absolutely.
I think I absolutely think we can. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, I will say there's a difference between sexy and promiscuous. So let's not be promiscuous.
Yeah.
I definitely think we can be sexy, especially when you're being sexy for your man. Like,
but what if you're just being sexy because you can't help yourself? You just come into church.
Well, that's fine too. Here's my philosophy. Like I told you, I came to grips with the fact that if God gave it to me, He wanted me to have it. If you gave me the sex appeal, you wanted me to have it.
Amen. And don't miss this part, Michala. It's a part of who God is too, because although we're teaching, or your church taught it in particular, that we are the image of God, we also have to understand that the things that make up femininity is a form of who God is as well. And that's the part of God that we need to, especially women, lean into a little bit more, because we mirror that. So our intuition, our sex appeal, our grace, our nourishment, our femininity, all of those things are just direct or derivatives of who she is.
Yeah.
She is. Lastly, take us home with this one. How do you best describe femininity?
Ooh. I best describe it as it's Tiana, true story. I think femininity for me is the total, it's the essence of who God made us as women. Femininity is exclusive to women.
Wow.
At least it's supposed to be. And femininity in its truest form really is exclusive to women, because it really doesn't matter. And this is no shade to the trans or any member of the LGBT. This is no shade. But it doesn't matter how you package yourself. Femininity isn't solely a look. It's literally who we are at our core, because that's the gift, that's the distinction that God placed in us. We teach at my church. We teach that the only real difference between the man and the woman, when we're talking about how we are as equal, is the fact that we have a womb. We're a wombed man. Well, that's part of our femininity, and it's the distinction that God gave to us as women. And so it can't be replicated. It can't be duplicated. It's literally the essence of who God made us as women.
To the man. I like this. I love that. I love that, because the essence reminds me of, you have the flower bush, which you can tell a rose bush, but the essence is that signature scent that it exudes. And I mean, we try to bottle it up, but it's almost it, but it's the essence.
Yeah.
How you got, I think.
Yes.
That's so sweet. Who, you know them?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
That you said that to Michala. Michala, take that in.
Absolutely. I absolutely do.
Yeah. But yeah, it's that essence that makes us who we are. And it's a tough question at times, especially if you don't think about it. But I admonish you to keep developing that definition for who you are and lean into that.
Mm-hmm.
It will change your life. It will show up in spaces when you're in the courtroom, or when I think you're going into tech law.
Yeah.
When you're in those spaces, or wherever you are, at the grocery stores, you lean into that, because if you lean into that essence, that feminine power, that's where God can then have that moment back with you, when God put man asleep to man's rib and created you and had you all to God's self. So
absolutely,
that's called intimacy.
Yes.
And that's what femininity does.
Yes.
Anything? Any last words? What you working on? Anything you need to get excited about? Make sure y'all follow Michala. She's private. Yes. I don't know why she decided to be private.
So, okay.
She's private. She might.
Here's why I did it. Because I'm going through character and fitness for the bar, and I don't want them sleeping on my social media, even though there's nothing on there. Like, I just feel like I don't want y'all to be nosy, so I'm gonna make it private.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm not really working on anything in particular at the moment that's like to the point that I need to announce it. I am working on some stuff though, and I want to talk to you about it, because it's actually that we have a conversation about femininity, because something I am working on is exclusively for women.
Okay. Can't wait to hear it.
Yes.
You gotta call me sometime.
Yes. But graduating this May, taking the bar exam in July, and we looking for a job.
Yeah, well, you'll find it. You'll get it. Just lean into that superpower. It's waiting for you. And it's waiting for us, too. Yes. The world can't wait to behold your beauty and grace. And I'm excited for you. I'm so happy that you were sitting at Nantucket that day.
Yes.
That we got a chance to just chop it up and hug and talk, and here we are today. And I hope this leads to a journey for me and you, as well as others that are on here or whatever. Next week is our final installment, Michala. We're concluding with Tanika Love. Tanika has a very interesting story because I got a sneak peek of it in a conversation with her. The rules of church actually diminish her confidence. And so we're going to learn more about how that looks, how that shows up in the spaces of just being a woman and being an adult. And when you have been beaten badly by what the church says you should and shouldn't do. And so that's next week at 6 o'clock p.m. right here on ItsMeYCB. Thank you so much to the beautiful, the graceful, the incomparable Michala Blue. I love you, girl. Thank you for doing this with me. Call me anytime you need me. Guys, thank you for joining on. If you're watching now, thank you so much for your comments. Michala is receiving them. She's doing two things at one time. I can't really do that. I'm like, I can't read and focus on you. So thank you so much. If you're watching the replay, please just leave us a nice comment that's filled with elegance, femininity, and grace. And so we'll see you guys on next Sunday at 6 o'clock. Thanks, Michala. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Talk to you all soon. Have a good Sunday evening.